Welcome to I Zero Trust What You Are Saying, your can't miss monthly blast of the freshest, hottest Zero Trust news and game-changing insights, brought to you by the Zero Trust Journey podcast. We've done the digging. All sources are linked in the show notes. Our hosts break down the news and share expert insights to keep you ahead in Zero Trust. Let's dive in.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another session of Zero Trust Journey podcast. This is a special segment where we cover Zero Trust news, where we talk about all the Zero Trust related news happened in May. There are about 4 to 5 top ones that we will discuss, and rest we will put in the show notes. With me, I have Elnaz Wavro, host at Zero Trust Journey. She will be giving her opinions as we go through the news segment as well.
From Forbes Technology Council, the future of cybersecurity leadership, Universal Zero Trust.
The first one is actually from Forbes, and when I read this one, this actually reminds me of the proactive versus reactive Zero Trust. So I'll start with the proactive one, where I don't know if you remember the GitLab story, when they were looking at Zero Trust, the whole situation with having the endpoints and identities and users. So they adopted Zero Trust to actually be their proactive approach versus the T-Mobile. They had multiple breaches. They went through all the fines and stuff, and then they adopted Zero Trust. So when I'm reading this article, this has a lot of good information about the leadership catalyst and the change you required for Zero Trust. This also talks about, this aligns with the NIST ZTA as well. So I see a little bit of kind of resemblance there. What is your take on that one?
Thank you, Victor. So the term universal zero trust architecture, it's not a recognized standard in industry at the moment. It is essentially a marketing term that I see that they're introducing as the next step in zero trust architecture. Well, the concept sounds great in theory, but the reality is we're not there yet. To me, this feels like a step too far at this point, and it could add unnecessary complexity and confusion to organizations that are already struggling to implement the basic zero trust architecture. So now here's the thing, trying to sell a more holistic model like UZTA, Universal Zero Trust Architecture, feels like trying to use the Force before mastering the Jedi training. Star Wars fans, we all are, right? So first we need to focus on getting the ZTA right, get that a strong and solid foundation in place, and then we can talk about expanding it to something more universal or proactive, as you mentioned.
Sure. Yeah. They did have this quote from Gartner, where the recent research from Gartner indicates that universal ZTNA is expected to grow to widespread adoption. So got greater than 40% by 2027. So I'm positive where people who have organizations who have started their zero trust journey long ago and matured it at this point, they might be adopting this universal ZTNA. One thing it really struck me when I'm reading this article is that they started with establish a security first culture. Look, that's not new. That's not something different. We've been talking about as general security, cybersecurity framework and program and process that build security first culture. So with this one now, it's going to be embedded in your DNA, because now they're going to be talking about business processes. They're going to be talking about non-technical terms to really enforce the zero trust. Then they also, towards the end, they also talked about the invest in seamless security infrastructure. I read an article recently where they were talking about the least amount of IT infrastructure to move the best and far for your organization, so that you don't have those 50, 70 clunky IT or security platforms or solutions that are trying to work together. You have the least amount of or seamless amount of security solutions who are integrated enough and moving you further. Your opinion on that one, El?
No, I agree with you. But again, it all goes back to, are we in general ready for that? So I would say, again, because we see a lot of organizations, especially government agencies and healthcare, that they're struggling implementing the zero trust, right? So I agree with that UZTA being a better approach and maybe more mature approach for zero trust architecture. But overall, I think it's going to take a little while for us to get there and even like prepare to implement it in our organizations. So again, 2027, I heard from you. I think that's the kind of feasible deadline. And I can see like in a couple of years, more organizations are going to adopt it.
From Carasoft, Palo Alto Networks on operationalizing zero trust architecture in government. From concept to implementation.
So this one is from Carasoft, and I like the title actually, Operationalizing Zero Trust Architecture in Government Environments. Look, the whole zero trust thing actually started from government. So if you look at the federal space, actually, you look at the Navy, the success story from Flank Speed. We talked about this with Zach Pugh, our co-host here. Now there's a ripple effect. The agencies which really led the charge for zero trust, now they're really becoming the catalyst, and all the remainder of the government agencies and segment, they're trying to play a catch up. With this article, when I'm reading it, they talked about the NIST, they talk about NCCOE, which is National Cyber Center of Excellence. I think they're going back to why we created zero trust, or what was the reason that zero trust existed to begin with. That's what they're trying to actually bring the fabric back to government agencies and our environments. Your opinion, Elle?
Well, I would say the zero trust itself isn't the hard part. Getting organizations to adopt it is. So government agencies, especially federal ones, we know that they are historically very slow to move. So while the idea of implementing zero trust with things like identity governance, microsegmentation, and STPs is solid, we have to think about the resources that is required for such an overhaul. I read the article earlier today. The article throws out concepts like, SASE and STPs, and it's as if they are magic solutions. But let's face it, all this requires a significant investment in both time and also resourcing and finding. Are all these agencies really ready to make that leap? For many, just getting basic zero trust frameworks in place is already a massive task. I'm not saying these concepts aren't important. They absolutely are. But my opinion here is simple. Start with the basic, focus on identity and least privileged access first, and then scale it from there. Trying to bite off the whole zero trust elephant at once will just overwhelm organizations. And I would say they just need to focus on achievable goals, not theoretical paradigm.
Yeah, I'll tag along on that one where you said to start with identity, do the microsegmentation. And the article, they also reminded us the objectives here under the integrating technology solutions, which is continuous trust verification and threat prevention. A lot of time, I think a lot of organizations, when we are considering zero trust, we forget about the continuous verification. That is a key pillar in there that we need to keep reminding ourselves that the traditional way of security is that you have the EDR, XDR, NDR, and DLPs and the email security. But the key piece of zero trust is that I'm going to continuously test verification. Then they also outline the single policy enforcement across all environments. That was always overlooked. If I have cloud environment, if I have data center, if I have DR side, if I have laptops, desktops, servers, workloads, containers, there is a security policy engine, separate, single, isolated for each asset. And the last one is they talked about interoperability with other security solutions. Look, we talked about this on this show a couple of times where when you're buying a new security solution, just look at how it's going to connect with your existing ecosystem. Let's not buy yet another disjointed solution that cannot integrate. So I think this is more to zero trust architecture, how to mature, but it also reminds the basics, the fundamentals, that where you go with the continuous verification along with what you said, Al. Anything you want to chime in when they talked about community collaboration and a holistic approach when it comes to the whole project and the importance in zero trust?
Well, you covered the most of it. And again, as I mentioned, we should start with making sure the foundation, the fundamentals is there. That's the holistic approach to implementing the proper zero trust in any organization. And don't fall for all those shiny tools, shiny products out there, because that's going to add more challenge and complexity. And it's going to kind of move us away from the main goal that we have, which is implementing the zero trust architecture in organizations.
From Defense Scoop, Pentagon's cyber malaise. Zero trust deadlines, but zero urgency.
So the next one is a funny headline. Zero trust deadlines translate to zero urgency.
That's a funny one.
Yeah, I read through the article. I will jump right into where they're talking about no more soft goals, far off timelines, because that's what happens when you have when you have a goal which is far off, then you get a sense of that we have time, we have enough time, and we might not. So they're breaking this down into like bringing the deadlines and KPI, really measure where we're going with this one. There's one part where they talked about that the whole CIO must work with all levels of the command to alter the calculus in adversary cyber division decision making. Look, even in the private sector, we face the same problem where a lot of these projects are executive sponsored, but at the end of the day, we didn't bring our right partners in the business units. We didn't get the right buy-ins, and it just falls through it. Anything you want to add to it when you read this article?
That is quite of a deadline, and that is very interesting. It's like a 2035 deadline for zero trust implementation. I would take it as a suggestion rather than a solution. Like, I'm not going to go that far, but with adversaries like China or Russia, that they are actively targeting our critical systems, well, this delay feels less like a strategy and more like a lack of urgency to me. And we know cyber threats are evolving quickly and every day, and they're getting more sophisticated. And while DoD's roadmap, of course, may sound logical on the paper, the reality is that we are already behind. And there are plenty of exploding vulnerabilities out there, and a decade-long timeline is simply too slow for the threats we face now. Well, I believe there is an urgent need for protecting our mission-critical systems. And it's kind of like if we wait too long, we are playing a dangerous game of, hey, catch me if you can, which we all know how that is going to end. Well, it's actually interesting to me to see that deadline.
Yeah. They do have a catchy line that I want to repeat for our audience and listeners. Zero trust isn't a compliance exercise. It's a war fighting necessity. So you can change the last part towards your organization mission, but I think I like this one where zero trust isn't a compliance exercise. A lot of times we have seen where it is treated as compliance, that if I go through the zero trust exercise and go through the principles and start the strategy, maybe I'll get a compliance sign off. That's not how it's supposed to be. But again, they have mentioned it in the article, so I wanted to highlight for our listeners.
From Computer Weekly, Zero Trust is redefining cybersecurity in 2025.
So in this one, we're talking about Zero Trust is redefining cybersecurity in 2025. We're halfway through already. Let's hear your opinion about it.
Well, reading the article, it's clear that zero trust is gaining ground as a must-have security strategy for organizations rather than nice to have. The idea of assuming that threats can come from within and outside and continuously verifying every access request is something that is no longer up for debate. The entire concept of zero trust has matured, and it is becoming fundamental for all the organizations. But here is where the article glosses over a critical point. Implementing zero trust at scale isn't easy. Sure, the principles are solid, but the challenges organizations face when operationalizing zero trust are significant. It's one thing to talk about identity verification and least privileged access. It's another to integrate those principles across diverse environments like cloud, perimeter, and hybrid setups. I see organizations struggling to even get basic zero trust frameworks in place, let alone some of the advanced models outlined here in the article. The article also touches on the need for cultural shifts, which is absolutely true. Zero trust isn't just a tech implementation, it is a mindset. And we always talk about that. Getting buy-in across all levels of the organization from C-suite to the IT team is the real challenge for majority of the organizations. Zero trust requires long-term commitment, and that means constant education, clear communication, and top-down support for the team. Again, while zero trust is a critical part of the strategy moving forward, we need to focus on practical and phased implementation. That's how I would approach it. Well, let's get the basics right first, right?
Yeah, and I like the part where you said a lot of the organizations are still struggling. And in the article, they actually mentioned the Gartner survey where 63% of the organizations had either attempted or partially implemented a zero trust initiative. 35% reported failures. So a lot of time when I am talking to my peers and engineers and architects, they are saying that, yes, I totally understand what Zero Trust is trying to tell me. On the paper, I am all in. But what do I do with it? And that part of really itemizing what do I do with it, building that architecture, building an architecture which you can scale and have the right mindset where it's not just one time done it and forget about it. That's not how the Zero Trust is supposed to be. So I think that continuous verification, I always advocate for it. When you're building an architecture, think about continuous verification, not just detection and prevention, respond and recover, going back to the NIST CSF. You can take credit of all the good work you have done for your security program and outline for a Zero Trust architecture. The one thing I advise everybody, and again, with the good stat here, 35% reported failures, because we start in a rush a lot of time. When it comes to Zero Trust, we're just rushed to pick up the next shiny tool on our, say, show floor or black hat show floor and call it Zero Trust. Hence the failures. I think really it's a 70% of the planning. Talking to the right people, understanding your processes, understanding your business, understanding your really, you have to embed yourself as what would happen in the digital space when a process, human identity, non-human identity, devices, different locations, when they're trying to access that data, their crown jewels and assets. So I like this one. This is a clear demonstration of like, it's not all rainbows and unicorns. When you try it, you do fail as well, and 35% reported failures. That's the reported one. I bet you it's more than that, where people just tried, organizations tried, and they don't even know that they have failed because that blinky box is still blinking. So
Yeah.
that's, yeah.
Well, rushing to implement zero trust concept without a strong foundation and enough education or kind of the cultural shift definitely is going to lead to frustration and missed expectations, which is going to cause the failure, right? It's going to lead to the failure of the mission.
From the Hacker News, eliminating public IPs, the case for zero trust access.
The last one we'll quickly touch upon is from the Hacker News. We are eliminating public IPs, the case for zero trust. I think that was... we discussed it, I think, during episode 12 or 11, where we talked about the attack surface management and your protect surface management. That's another testimonial where if you don't know you have exposed public IPs with your RDP, SSH, and other things, then that's not going to help you with your zero trust architecture. Now, look, the services you need for your employees, for your vendors, for your partners, for your clients, for your customers, think it through. Again, don't rush into buying a blinky box on the name of Zero Trust. So this will help you understand, if you have a public IP space, what services are you exposing? Why are you exposing? Is there still need for it? Can you leverage latest and modern technologies to actually reduce that visibility? So if you don't have any public space or public IPs actually being scanned and no services available, you're not giving me a whole lot as an adversary to come in and knock on your door and try to figure out how to get in. So that's another, I think it's one of those things where when you're thinking about zero trust architecture, that's one thing you can also consider.
Yeah, so I'd like to add that eliminating public IPs as part of a zero trust strategy, it's a very interesting idea. But to me, that is not a one size fits all solution. So we need to keep things in perspective. So removing public IPs is certainly a step in the right direction. It is essentially hiding your attack surface from the outside world, making it harder for attackers to locate and target your systems, internal systems. But it's a huge challenge for many organizations, especially those with legacy infrastructures. We know there are organizations that they have legacy systems, Windows XP, or servers that they cannot be upgraded due to certain scenarios. So those heavily rely on, availability. So it's easier said than done. Making everything private and invisible requires careful planning, from network re-architecture to adopting secure methods like private link services or VPNs to handle the internal communication. And here is the thing, the zero trust isn't just about eliminating the public IPs, it's about validating every request. So whether internal or external, before granting access, we need to make sure we validate that request. So hiding the IP cannot be the only measure to take to achieve the zero trust. It's a small piece of a much bigger puzzle. that involves identity management, as you mentioned, continuous authentication, and context-based access controls. Without those, simply removing IP doesn't cut it off.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think this one is more relevant to the organizations who have like /29 or /28 public IPs, and they're just keeping it, or they use it for dev, or they use it for testing. This is for those where if you don't need to, maybe try to reduce that public IP space so that it doesn't come back to you as an organization. You're not a beacon to adversaries that they're trying to come to your home. So, all right, with that, we'll wrap up. We'll add some news articles in the show notes so that you guys can see it again. We'll do this monthly so that you don't have to go and comb the internet. We will provide you the Zero Trust news every month so that you can get the latest and greatest what's going on out there. With me, I have Al. Al, once again, thank you very much. And everyone, stay tuned on ztjourney.com. We'll post everything over there.
See you guys next month.
Thanks for joining us on Zero Trust Journey. If this episode sparked new ideas or gave you practical insights, be sure to like, subscribe, and share it with your network. Your support helps us continue bringing you valuable conversations and real-world stories. We'd love to hear from you. Share your feedback or even your own Zero Trust journey by reaching out to us. Your story could inspire others in the community. Stay tuned for more expert insights, compelling stories, and actionable advice to help you advance your Zero Trust strategy. Until next time, stay curious and keep making progress on your Zero Trust journey. See you in the next episode.